Magic is an illusion used to create reality. On the patch, they've got the Caduceus, which is not the symbol for medicine, it's the symbol for business. There are miles and miles and miles of shelves beneath the Vatican with all of the most ancient stuff you could imagine, and it's off limits to you. So if you're talking about the control of the ancient knowledge, it's right there. Like, you never know what was sitting in the back of the Library of Alexandria or these other places where they had these books stored. That's just sitting in the bottom of the Vatican.
So the first time I met my guest today, the Headless Giant of the Headless Giant podcast, I got a text in Scottsdale. He said, "Hey, I'm here at the Quest for Ancient Civilization conference. Are you here yet?" And I said, "Hey, yeah, let's meet up." And then we had met like online, but that was our first, like, we had never like it was just boom, we were hanging out for like the first couple hours of Quest for Ancient Civilization conference. But it was fun to meet you in that fashion because we just kind of, jumped into it, right? That's what you do at a conference like that, right?
Right. It was a strange and also awesome time because it's all these people that you've heard from all over these channels and
Yes.
stuff. And then there they are. What do you say to a person like that? It's really kind of it merges the personal with the public, right? Because normally when you're watching these shows and stuff, you're just bumming around the house and stuff. And then you see these people, it's kind of a different experience altogether. So, you got to just talk about what you know. Maybe start the conversation, because that's the thing too. Like, we have conversations with TVs and people around us and stuff in our heads. And then once you meet them, it's like you lose all those words and you're not thinking about the same stuff anymore. But it's a really strange and kind of interesting experience to meet all my online friends in person for the first time.
Yeah, it is. That was the biggest one for me. Like, because I've been to some conferences before, Cosmic Summit twice, and then the second time I knew a couple people, and I went to Contact in the Desert, Mike and I. But like that one, I knew like 10, 15 people. It was like a real gathering of creators and whatnot. Had you been to a conference like that before?
Never. First time. And my buddy said, "Hey, I can get you free tickets." So I'm like, "I'm there. Let's do it." So yeah, I just, flew out, met everybody that I've been talking about and with on podcasts for the first time out in Phoenix. So it was a really eye-opening experience, and I'd love to do it again.
Yeah, they're supposedly doing Sedona and Austin, so we'll see how that goes. But if not, Cosmic Summit, you should definitely go to Cosmic Summit because that's a real banger. So what's interesting is that the conference was called Quest for Ancient Civilization Conference. And I pulled this from your ex, but the future is ancient is a thing that you say, and it's my belief that all this stuff, like the present, is ancient too, and it's all connected. And so I wanted that. So let's start with your podcast and get into some of the other projects that you do. But what was the inspiration for the podcast? And did you have early experiences in occult exposure to those kinds of topics, like online, or like how did you get into this stuff in paganism and things like that?
Well, I got involved in looking into occultism at a very early age. I think I've always been interested in the hidden part of society. It's like everybody sort of sees what's going on around themselves and knows that there's something hidden to what's happening, and yet they're really not interested in what's going on in that hidden world. They sort of keep their eyes, the blinders straight ahead, and they don't look around at the conspiracies or even some of the interesting figures that help start all of this stuff. And usually we're given a kind of a narrative from day one, and we're supposed to stick with that narrative, even though we find out very soon that, it's totally crap. It's based off of acceptable ideas and not really looked at as being truth as being supreme. So that's really what started my whole trip down the occult rabbit hole, is trying to figure out what's going on behind the scenes. And so the thing that inspired me to go with the Headless Giant as a name is because Aleister Crowley actually used passages from this, what they call the PGM, or the Greek magical papyri from 2nd century AD, to grab rituals and use them in his magic back in the turn of the century, 1900s. So this guy's drawing on the past really heavily, and one of those rituals was called the Bornless Rite. And in this Bornless Rite, they talk about this God above all other gods, that, you know, they have an illustration of him, and he's got no head. He's got writing all over his body. He's got no head. He's holding the Caduceus. And to, you know, people looking at it at the time, they're like, what the hell is this formula? What is he talking about? So Crowley used the formula to add into his Abramelin rituals. And so it was just...
He was one of the interesting figures you mentioned before that creates all this stuff, right?
Well, he compiles it. He compiles it, and he puts a lot of his own feelings in his own, but I mean, that's sort of what we all do in life. But the idea is that there's been very different ways of seeing the world that have kind of survived in the shadows. And I think magic is one of those aspects, because we find it all over the ancient world. Even though they had banned in Greece and Italy, in Rome, they banned the practice of black magic, right? So they had similar taboos and mores about magic that we do today, only, you know, it was in a different context. So a lot of people completely miss that, and they think that everything, you know, really switched dramatically for the better after Christianity was implemented. What they're not willing to do is really look at the actual facts and figures on the ground, which one of the reasons why I keep saying the future is ancient. It was a show that me and my friend Kareen had done on Spaces, is because of the fact that we seem to be repeating these cycles over and over again, and we're just unaware of how relevant these ancient cycles are to our modern everyday life.
Interesting new perspectives on old occult principles, straight from like the first tagline of your podcast. And, you know, I thought, so this it's not a topic I've ever really gone heavy on. But I've gone heavy on like conspiracy theories and whatnot, because I went to Iraq. And then within a week I was like, this is fucking bullshit. I have like a tattoo of a Caduceus on my arm, like, because I was a medic in the army. And it's just so fascinating to me that that and that incident and all that stuff is connected to global narratives and cycles and all that stuff that's repeated itself time and time again. I wonder if we can't see it because it shows up in different context each time. Like, it's in a modern context, so it's harder to see.
Well, the serpent is a very, very interesting ancient symbol, right? So you've got these two serpents coiled around a pole. It seems very straightforward, like, well, I guess the serpents are climbing, or they're trying to do, they're representing some sort of ascent, right? But there's so much more to the serpent of chaos, right, that is sort of embedded into all the narratives around medicine, around health, around all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What do we see? That again, it's the serpent. It's a single serpent in that case, but that goes all the way back to ancient Greece as well. All of these different narratives that we have around medicine, where, you know, it's really hard to know whether or not you're being ripped off or not when it comes to medicine. And it seems like that's the big thing that everybody's taking advantage of, at least in the medical field. Is like, how does a person know whether they're getting the right cost on the treatments that
or if it's even the appropriate treatment or the treatment that works or whatever? Like, because like you can go into any surgeon now, because it's very commoditized. Like, I had a hip surgery that I didn't need, but I was desperate to get out of hip pain. And this doctor was like, yeah, 90% success rate. And then you go look at the study afterwards, and the success rate, his definition of success rate in the study was way different than mine. And so, yeah, I see where you're coming from there.
Well, the Greeks also looked at, so you've got the two different forms, right? You've got the rod of Asclepius, which only has a single snake that goes up it. That's actually the medical symbol, right?
Uh-huh.
The Caduceus is a perversion that the army specifically made and put on the hospitals because they didn't know what the staff of Asclepius was. So they just used whatever symbol it was with the snake, and they're like, hey, this is good enough. So they started putting that on the patch. As you've seen in the medical corps, they have on the patch, they've got the Caduceus, which is not the symbol for medicine. It's the symbol for business. So in a lot of ways, I see this as sort of like the whisper of the gods. Like if you look into this stuff, you're going to find out, hey, actually, that's the symbol of business. You're getting taken for a ride. And in some ways, you could see the snake, the serpent of chaos, as being sort of that symbol. Here's the thing about the rod of Asclepius. When the snake sheds its skin, the Greeks thought it was like a new being, right? It had shed the old way, and now it's come out healed. And this is why we see the snake associated with medicine as well, is because it has this once it gets big enough, it sheds its old skin and now has a completely new one.
Rejuvenation.
Right. And so that was the symbol for not only medicine but also for chaos, right? Like these are two symbols that are on the same sort of level. Deception, this is also a serpent trait. So whenever you see a serpent, I think that's the world's biggest yellow flag warning sign. It's like, hey, pay attention, serpent. This could be a really good thing, or this could really hurt you. But most of the time, people have either one or the other in their minds, and they have absolutely no idea that it can be both, right?
Yeah, you see it all over megalithic architecture, all over it, especially in India and in like at Angkor Wat and Angkor Thom and shit like that.
Right. And I was talking recently about the Adam and Eve, the seal, Adam and Eve seal. Like this was found in the 1850s, and it was just a little rolling seal that they used to put a impression into clay tablets that they would often put with some sort of trade good that marks who you're getting these trade goods from. So the Akkadians had this motif called the banquet motif that looks a lot like Adam and Eve. You got this little snake on the side, right? You got Adam and Eve around this plant with this fruit hanging down. So this was, this little seal kind of revealed that maybe Adam and Eve, the story of our cosmology, the story of our origin, could have been an advertisement for a trading company that used the little Adam and Eve seal to brand their products. We could be basing our cosmology off of an ancient advertisement.
Well, I'm just stuck on the fact that I've got the symbol for business on my arm instead of the symbol for medicine. That cracks me up. So, when the Catholic Church started banning these practices, I had this suspicion that like people at high places, both in the church and in aristocracy, were still actually practicing them. Is that true?
I think not only is that true, but I've got really good examples of where they're doing that specifically today, which I think a lot of people have missed.
And they wouldn't be doing it today if they weren't doing it then, right?
Right. What I think people miss about the occult is that the occult and intelligence practices have always been integrated. Always been integrated, because the occult trains the mind in a certain way that maybe not all of the public has access to. So, for instance, you've got a practice called mnemonics, right? And mnemonics goes back to this goddess called Nemesis. And Nemesis is the Greek goddess of memory. She's the mother of the 9 muses. So memory, right, this mnemonic process, the way we make memories is how we reach inspiration, how we reach this divine madness with the gods that brings us to prophesying and creating poems based upon the gods and stuff. Like that's the linkage. Is memory is the linkage in there. And what we find is that the ancients would have these massive mnemonic device catalogs within their heads. They could associate anything they saw to something in their minds, and that association, the stronger the association, the stronger the memory. Plato actually complained that all this writing was causing people's memories to go to shit, because he noticed it. Hey, all of the stuff you're writing down, you don't feel like you have to remember that anymore. So when I ask you a question, you have no idea. You got to go back to your writing form. Now, this is the difference between an oral history and a written history, is that the oral history has to be memorized perfectly. You have to use that memorization, that mythology, all the rest of that stuff perfectly. And that's how you relate to the rest of the environment. That's an occult practice. In fact, you find later on the memory palace idea sort of becoming part of a type of a deep state practice, where you've got your memory palace picking up all of the details from the world around you so that you can remember with completely eidetic process. Like you can see what they call as a photographic memory, right? This is so important for people who are inside the conspiracy, so they can keep everything straight.
Yeah. Some people like have that like innate ability, like whatever reason. But yeah, I totally believe that there's ways to access that and other powerful mental states. I just never really looked too hard into it before. Like the most occult I've ever gone is playing Dungeons and Dragons. So did you ever play Dungeons and Dragons?
I have actually never played in my life.
I'm shocked. It's what's funny is when it first came out as a game, people associated it with occult practices and dark magic. The church, tried to, do that on that game. And I remember I was playing it at like 6 years old going, this is, like it's, there's nothing wrong with this. Like there's nothing wrong with what I'm doing. But I did grow up in a Catholic church. Not like intensely or anything. Did you grow up in a church?
I did. I was raised in the church. I think.
Which one? Catholic?
It was non-denominational. So they tried to get away from all the labels, while at the same time maintaining very strict, theological connection to the Bible. But, I found what they're trying to do when it comes to the occult is they're trying to target the imagination. You have to be able to think the way they do and see the world they do. And when you're introducing other elements from other imaginary worlds, that's bringing your focus off of their cosmology. And you've got to have the full cosmology. You got to have the full cosmology if you're going to believe all of it. So it's a very destructive practice to think outside of that cosmological bubble. And what we see now is the same thing happening all over the world. All these governments are trying to ban speech. You're not allowed to think outside of their cosmological bubble. They've given you the framework, and all you're allowed to do is think within that bubble, and anything you do or say outside of that bubble must be punished severely.
Yeah. And even places like here who have a Second Amendment, a First Amendment, they try to control speech by pushing people to extreme beliefs and then having us police each other. It's a Nazi move where you just propagandize and demonize people, and then
this is the crab bucketing. Have you ever heard of this term, crab bucketing? This is so beautiful.
I just watched a video though, like the other day, about a guy who saved a blue crab from a bucket of crabs at a market in Asia, and then he raised it as his pet. So I was just thinking, I had this compassion for the rest of the crabs, but that's just my random thing. But yeah, crab bucketing. Is it somewhere along those lines?
It's very similar. So in a crab bucket, if one of the crabs starts to escape and get away, the other crabs will grab it and pull it back in.
Dicks.
Right. So what you find is
I
that
see what you did there.
within society, you find that these, the extremism, if not being able to reach across the aisle, is because they're pulling you back in, right? You have to be
bucketing.
pulled into the crab bucket, and that's a great way of doing it. Again, like all of this stuff is very ancient rhetorical strategies, which were pioneered by the ancient Greeks, right? And there's a problem. So if we were to play right now, are you smarter than a 5th century Athenian? You would probably lose. I'd lose, right? We've gotten dumber significantly from the 5th century to today. Like as a society, we've got more stuff and we've got smarter people, but on
it's
average,
because of the systems we've created. We've created these systems that, like, it's why, like, literally, I was thinking about this the other day because I was having some plumbing issues, and I'm like, I don't know how to fucking fix anything, right? And it's like we've got this system that, like, I participate in commerce and then I fucking buy services. And so it makes me think about you said the Athenians. So was knowledge like a hierarchical thing? Probably, right? Like
very much.
So certain people knew everything, and then everyone else shared very little. It kind of goes away. Our money system's like that right now. And I actually think modern times, our information system, even though we have access to so much more than like a peasant would have, we still, I think, probably only have a small bit of the veil lifted, maybe 20%. That's how I see it. And that's being optimistic on a day. Some days I think we don't know shit at all. Like, just,
Right. So if you go back and you look at the ancient system of mystery schools, like the Eleusinian mystery schools, you had tons of oracles. You had a huge college down in Egypt, which I'm sure you've talked about before. It's outside the Hawara Pyramid. It's a huge complex. It's like 2 football fields under the ground, under these massive stone structures on top of it. They've yet to do any kind of excavation of it because they're, it's flooded. Like it's all flooded in there, and it's because of the dam that it's flooded. So they kind of don't want to be responsible for destroying one of the most ancient holy sites in the world. So they don't want it excavated, but we do know it's under there. We've got the ground penetrating radar to prove that Herodotus was correct. There's a massive underground secret mystery school college right there outside of Hawara.
Jeez, can you imagine what's in there?
Thousands of people have been through, like all of the people we still know from ancient history, Plato, all these mathematicians and stuff. They went through that complex. That's how they got smart. Right. So the ancient way of introducing a type of initiation event. Right. So at the Eleusinian mystery schools, they say, well, it was a mystery what they did, but we kind of know that it was this death and rebirth ritual. Right. You would go into this dark cave for 3 days, and then later you would come out a completely changed human being. And we've got some indications from books like this one. This one's one of my favorite books, and you'll hear me talk about it all the time on my show. The Golden Ass, right? By this guy named Apuleius. Yeah, The Golden Ass by Apuleius. Nice. And in the end of that book, he talks about being transformed back into a human being through the grace of Isis. So in the 2nd century Rome, when this was written, Isis cult was still viable. That's thousands of years of Isis worship being, practiced in the Roman Empire in 2nd century AD. And not only that, but he was initiated into the Osiris cult in Rome. They had the cult of Osiris in Rome in this book. Now, he wasn't, the book is fiction, but he wasn't making up the parts about the temples or the locations or any of the stuff that was like in reference there. But what you do see is that they had this ancient mystery school practice that kept the gods alive in all of these different areas. This is why they were polytheists, is because you would go through these ordeals, you would go through these initiations, you would witness the gods, and then you would come back and bring that knowledge back with you. And so with this guy, after he got transformed from a donkey back into a human being, he decided that he was going to do lawyer work for the poor. So anybody who needed him, he would do it for free as a part of his initiation. So part of the initiation is you have to do service for other people. This is all stuff that's sort of kept out of the popular consciousness when it comes to the mystery schools. Is if you've participated in the mysteries, you have to do charity work. And what do we see the constant refrain of the Freemasons? Well, we do charity work.
Yeah.
It goes back to the ancient sources, and they're not really given credit where credit's due. This was part of the ancient mystery schools, and of which Freemasonry is a part. So it's an offshoot of that ancient practice that really gets lost in the mix there.
What's this is just an interesting squirrel, but I need to look more into this. I need to ask like some of my uncles, but my grandfather was a Shriner, which connects him to Freemasonry in some way that maybe you could tell me about.
Shriners are an offshoot of Freemasonry, so they got started around the 1850s. As sort
and
of
it's
like
a charity.
Well,
like
that's a big part of it, right? So the Shriners Children's Hospital is a network of charities that are closely associated with these guys. Now, again, we're combining the worlds of charity and deep state intelligence, because a major factor in these secret or Eleusinian mystery schools is the ability to keep secrets, right? We're still in the dark about what exactly happened at the Eleusinian mysteries to this day, because they weren't allowed to tell other people about it. You had to actually experience it. That was the difference. So now you've got an element of secrecy involved with the charity, involved with the initiation. And now you're starting to see exactly why those people would be so attractive to governments to put into positions of authority, right? Because they had to go through the ordeal. They came out a better person. They've got to give back to their community. And now where do you want them? You want them at the heads of your government. So this was the ancient schools creating these individuals who went on to become the leaders of their people.
So this is happening in 2nd century AD, Roman Catholic Church. And so they're controlling what everyone else gets to believe in, but the upper echelon are the ones going through, getting initiated into these other ways of seeing the world, right?
Well, there is a competition going on between these different mystery schools, right? And we see this with Tertullian, for example. So Tertullian comes right out and says, those Mithraics, they're all a bunch of losers. They're all a bunch of, right? So he was another 2nd century Christian, and he was alleging that the Mithras stole works from Christianity, which we know for a fact that he was projecting they had stolen stuff from the Mithras, and we have that in the archaeological record, which doesn't go back before 0 AD, obviously, for Christianity.
Right.
So we've got all the stuff proving that they're kind of taking all of this mystery school stuff and incorporating that into Christianity as well. And so you've got this competing mystery school idea here where Christianity is one type of salvation. Mithraism is a different type of soteriology. That's who invented soteriology, is the Greeks when it comes down to this mystery school stuff. It's the salvation of dying and rising again. It's a common motif throughout all the mystery schools and the pantheons of different gods, is the dying and rising again motif. And so what the Christians did specifically in creating the Vatican was replacing the old forms of intelligence networks, because as we know, the Library of Alexandria, very closely associated with the port, right? Alexandria is a port city. It was meant to control the information of the sea trade, right? So the very first form of intelligence gathering is naval intelligence, right? Because you have to know where you're going. You have to know the conditions. You've got to be, on top of everything when it comes to ships, because they're so vulnerable out on the open seas. You've got to know what everybody else knows so that those ships don't get raided and you guys get killed.
That's how our trade routes work today. It's just probably...
Who was the first intelligence network in the United States? Naval intelligence.
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
It's always naval intelligence.
You kind of got to know, like, from the recon to, like, what kind of plants and animals are there, and minerals and hostiles, and not just ship related. It's like
everything goes into naval intelligence. Everything, because the ships are a massive investment. It's a massive investment and a massive centralization. So one of the places I've studied is Carthage. And Carthage had this huge walled harbor where all of the ships would go into this walled harbor so that nobody could see what they were offloading or onloading onto the ships. These were massive intelligence operations. So you weren't allowed to see what they were offloading. You weren't allowed to know what the prices are. You weren't allowed. Now, the Carthaginians are Canaanite Phoenicians, and the Canaanite Phoenicians had the world's largest and longest lasting sea empire, going all the way back to the Minoans. And they were the traders. They were the shipbuilders. They were a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but they were centered in that Mediterranean sort of milieu where naval intelligence basically got its start. You can look at the Iliad and the Odyssey, specifically the Odyssey, as being parables for naval intelligence.
That's funny. That's funny to me. What if history isn't linear? What if civilizations rise and fall again and again? Discover the shocking truth in Deja Vu, Has Everything Already Been? By my friend Alexander Cheshkovich. Grab your copy now on Amazon. The link is in the description below. And subscribe to Dave's Multiverse on YouTube, Spotify, and Rumble today so you don't miss a thing. The largest pre-Younger Dryas potentially. Because it's my opinion that this is likely another iteration of a human civilization. But that's wild. That naval intelligence thing, I'd never thought about it that way.
We call them Canaanite Phoenicians because they like to rebrand, right? As you were saying, this is another rebrand. So Minoans, they were kind of a rebrand too. You've got the same strand of naval intelligence, or originalism, as I like to call it, within the roots of the Minoans going all the way back to the Atlanteans. Right?
Map making's part of naval intelligence as well.
Bingo.
Yeah. Interesting. And so, am I right that as the Roman Catholic Church took control, especially in other areas, they were suppressing this information for like control purposes?
Well, they had massive book burning operations. One of the interesting things about the Alexandria again is that they had this library there.
Inside job.
Right. So when they burned the Library of Alexandria, that was a lot of the shipping stuff. That was a lot of the stuff that was held by the harbor for the harbor masters as a freight catalog. But the real thing that had all of the philosophical and religious work, that was actually separated off from that stuff, and it was held at a different temple location, which the Christians burned specifically for having all of that pagan information. This was when they killed Hypatia. They actually, a female philosopher down in Alexandria, a Greek woman, and they killed her for not being a Christian. And so they specifically said that. And the people who killed her and burned down the libraries were given sainthood by the Orthodox and Catholic Church. So when you see that happening, it's really hard not to conclude that this represents a takeover of sorts. And if we go back to the Punic Wars, we can kind of see who's responsible for, or who wants to take over the Roman and Greek empires, which is the Canaanite Phoenicians. This is the battle between Carthage and Rome. Like this was a big separation point. Now, the Canaanite Phoenicians were a lot more of a disparate tribal system, but the naval empires had to be very, very, very much involved in naval intelligence. If anybody could pull off a strategy like creating a new religion and then using it to take over the Roman Empire, I don't see a better target to point at other than the people who gave us our alphabet. The Phoenician alphabet. I mean, like,
right.
Greek used the Phoenician alphabet. That's where
Right.
Latin comes from. These guys
Right.
were very influential in creating phonetic language. Before that, it was all about these, pictograms. Pictograms as opposed to phonetics. And phonetics is the idea that the sound has a symbol. That was their contribution. So before that, we had linear A and linear B, which we don't fully have translated yet. But what it moved into is the phonetic language. And the phonetic language came through the Phoenicians because they were trying to make ports that would understand each other using these symbol system, this key symbol system. This is where we get our, A, B, C all comes through that Canaanite Phoenician lens. So before that, the Minoans gave us linear A and linear B, which is also the Canaanite Phoenicians before the rebrand.
What do you think of the conspiracy theory that the Library of Alexandria was a heist covered up as a fire, and that a lot of that pagan stuff and anything they didn't want everyone to know, astronomical stuff, all kinds of things are now likely in the catacombs under the Vatican?
There are miles and miles and miles of shelves beneath the Vatican.
Miles
and miles of shelves with all of the most ancient stuff you could imagine, and it's off limits to you. So if you're talking about the control of the ancient knowledge, it's right there. Like, you never know what was sitting in the back of the Library of Alexandria or these other places where they had these books stored. That's just sitting in the bottom of the Vatican that hasn't been looked at for thousands and thousands and thousands of years.
So nobody goes and looks at it? No one looks at it?
Well, they are very strict on who gets to go in and who does not. And they try to pretend that they're a religious organization. But you ask anybody who's been through that thing, and they say it just keeps going and going and going forever. Like, this is one of the biggest warehouses of human knowledge and information. And if you don't think that's an information job, that's, an inside job, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, they're openly saying, we've got all this stuff that you can't see.
Right.
And yeah, you've got the internet, but we're going to give you the AI tools that are going to narrow your mind even further.
Fuck, the U.S. government does the same thing. We've got all this information, but you can't see it. It's classified.
It's one of the oldest inclinations of government entirely. I usually talk with, on Sundays, I have Ricardo and I have Ethan, and we
Trialogue, shout out.
Yeah, the Trialogues, check that out. Sunday mornings, 10:30 Central. What we do is we talk about a lot of these different topics, especially the idea of metallurgy from North America and how metallurgy from North America could have influenced a lot of what happened in Europe, because you've got float copper, which is the most pure copper coming out of this Great Lakes region inside of North America. You've got Canaanite Phoenician writing on freaking boulders up here, right? That they call, oh no, they're actually, what do they call them? Ice, no, they're not called iceberg. Erratics. They're called glacial erratics, right? So they've got these massive boulders that are on top of these little tiny rocks, usually 3 rocks, and they call them glacial erratics, which is basically impossible for a glacier to actually deposit this thing on top of tiny little rocks, over 900 pounds. And it's also got Canaanite Phoenician writing on it, close to where they found this float copper that most likely supplied all of Europe. So if you're talking about this naval empire, It's right here. It's right in our backyards. Nobody's looking at it. Now, if you go by the purity standards that, have been set, you can find shipwrecks with this same type of copper with the same purity as the stuff up in Michigan. And they still say that, actually it was Leif Erikson or Columbus or one of those guys that was the first ones to have European contact. Give me a break. They've been going back and forth to North America for thousands and thousands of years. It's been known.
Well, they have maps that don't make any sense that show that. There's a lot of that. So
naval secrecy.
My intro into conspiracies was shortly after 9/11, the internet and looking at videos online was just becoming big, and I had this weed guy who you couldn't go buy weed from him unless you sat there and smoked with him and talked with him for a while, and then he'd always show you crazy shit on the internet. And he started showing me all this 9/11 conspiracy stuff, and I was like, oh, what is this? This is crazy. And then just some crazy stuff happened in my personal life, and I took the bus from Nova Scotia to Iowa and joined the army, and ended up in the middle of the result of that. And then I came home and started looking into all these different conspiracies. But and when it comes to the Bushes and stuff like that, Crowley gets connected to them and whatnot. But I never really
Crowley was an officer.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is there's this book called I'm blanking on it, but it's talking about Crowley as a special agent, right?
Okay.
Special Agent 666. So this guy starts petitioning the British government to find out if they have any records about Crowley. And they're saying back to him, we can't tell you about that. That's classified under naval intelligence. Well, it turned out that Crowley was a double agent working for the Crown, getting paid as an officer in the British Navy to come over to the Americas and talk with Germans as if he hated his home country, as if he hated England. This is why he was playing the character of this evil villain guy, right? He's this, right? He's seen as the most evilest man alive. And so they approached him, they appealed to his patriotism, said, why don't you go over and work for the War Department and go get those German guys to go blow up an American vessel. This is before World War One, right? He comes over there, he comes over to America before World War One on this ship, and he tells the Germans specifically to blow up that ship. And you can find this on the manifest. The guy was specifically saying to the Germans, the way to keep America out of the war is to show them you're serious by blowing up the Lusitania. And when they did, it got us into World War One. So yeah, the occult and the intelligence network are literally like there's no difference. Like you can't separate the two.
Well, yeah, and it's documented that the CIA was and the Nazis were actively pursuing, ancient relics that were supposedly had magic and things like that. It often gets said that, the Nazis were doing that, but we were fucking doing it too. We were doing everything they were doing. Sometimes we do stuff because they were doing it. Sometimes they do stuff because we were doing it. But the whole idea was if there's something to this, you're not going to find it or use it or get to it before us, kind of thing.
The psychic Cold War did not start with Russia. As we all know, with the remote viewing operations, those were part of the Cold War, but they had a similar psychic Cold War going on between Britain and Germany.
Yes.
The Nazis
and the Americans eventually.
Right. In fact, a lot of the Prussian model of occultism was very highly influential over in England. They were, they were cousins. They didn't really want to be involved in wars with one another. And one of the things that after World War I was such a huge disaster for the Germans, they wanted to have revenge on Aleister Crowley, specifically that guy, for getting them into that war. And so these Nazis came over and actually tried to parachute into England to have a weirdo kind of a wizard duel with Crowley. And Crowley said, "Yeah, I'm down for it. I'm gonna wizard duel you." And they caught the Nazi guy who was parachuting into England, and they put him away in a prison for the rest of his life.
I would have wanted to see the wizard duel.
Me too.
Do you ever see the South Park where Cartman's like using psychic powers on people? He's like me, and the two wizards are doing it like back and forth and stuff like that. I don't know, just made me think about that.
Exactly. Well, that's what the occult has always been sort of known for, is like occult spiritual powers, and you've got all of these charlatans, and in some ways that's absolutely true. It's been a huge bastion for the most dishonest charlatans.
Yeah, there's where the perversion comes in. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it is perversion. I think it can be both and be at the same time. So what would the definition for magic be that would cover all forms of magic? And I think I have a pretty good one. It's magic.
I would say, this is my guess, but I would something to do with the like all the elements as well as consciousness, like consciousness and interacting with elements, elemental forces.
Very true, but I think you could zoom out a little bit more on magic, and you could say that magic is an illusion used to create reality.
Magic is an illusion used to create reality. So technically, could propaganda be magic?
Big time. Language, magic. We're just creating a simulation of the meaning that we're trying to get through to each other's heads. We're creating an illusion of meaning that now gets transferred and then translated in your head. Like, I'm not translating it for you. It could be several different things right now. It's just your brain works fast enough to understand it.
So that's so interesting to me, because in Dungeons and Dragons, like illusionists, there's different types of magicians, or different types of like wizards harness elemental forces and stuff like that. Illusionists like put the whammy on you or whatever, right? But it also like happens systemically. I just found out that fucking the guy that owned the company that published almost all the textbooks that we read growing up was fucking Epstein's daughter's.
Just Ghislaine Maxwell's father.
Ghislaine Maxwell's father. Yeah.
Right.
Ghislaine Maxwell's father. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. Yeah. So that's because that's a control of your perception and your consciousness and your reality. So
let me ask you
same thing, right?
If you've got a goal, if you're working towards something, is that not an illusion? Because you haven't achieved that goal yet.
So I do that all the time. All the stuff that I've ever accomplished in my life, I'm like I'm future looking towards it, and there's something, and that's what's pushing me towards that. I've got a vision of it in my head.
Right. You're involved in making your illusion a reality. That's magic.
Cool.
Right? Because
I'm a magician.
We all are. We're so separated from the idea that making something that we see in our heads isn't magic, when actually, where was it before? Like, what are thoughts made out of? What are you doing with this thing? We're involved in a magical universe. We just don't see it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's really hard to like figure out exactly what consciousness is doing in relation to matter and like stuff like that, and like so it's it's hard, something that's hard to like study scientifically, which is why it gets kind of put in the other category. But that doesn't mean that it's any less real, because we can access these states through breathing, rituals, through psychedelics, through setting a goal, through propaganda. We can control other people's states. So that's so interesting.
One of the things that we've lost is through poetry. Poetry is a great way to create an illusion that can influence reality. And in fact, I think that's what all these songs are. And
rap is technically poetry. The CIA created gangster rap, and I love gangster rap. Grew up during that era, but the CIA created that with some insiders and the crack cocaine epidemic on purpose to pump up the prison industrial complex. And no one can tell me any different. But some of that shit was good.
But you're seeing what I'm saying. So if you go back and look at the ancient myths, you start to understand they're making these illusions to influence the reality of the linkages between all of these things. And this is why ancient symbols are so important, is because they link all these different ideas, all these different illusions into one thing, and it gives people something, that's their own, a shared experience that then they can build from.
Yeah. It's just, it bugs me a little bit. Like, I don't know if philosophically is the right word. Existentially, that like my entire paradigm has been created for me. But what's refreshing is that a lot of this shit is becoming available and declassified and uncontrolled and stuff like that. The CIA was balls deep in all remote viewing and mind sight and all kinds of stuff like that. And now we could do stuff like go to the Monroe Institute. We can do psychedelics because they're becoming less stigmatized. Nowadays, we can, like we were just talking before we went live. I can't remember what. It must have been a YouTube rabbit hole or something, but Mike, my former co-host, Mike, shout out Mike. He was always talking about the Gateway tapes and the Monroe Institute, and I believe he did them, or he attempted, or maybe he started and fell off. I'd have to ask him, but I was literally on the website and they were trying to sell me a CD. But the point is they're trying to make is that some of it's being decentralized, wouldn't you say, in the modern day, or is that just my illusion too?
Well, we're reading through the Gateway Experience, which was this declassified CIA manual, which is maybe let me check here. It's 200 pages where they walk through the cosmology of the Monroe Institute, right? So basically, this was the entire cosmology of why Monroe, Robert A. Monroe, he wrote this one book called Journeys Outside of the Body, why he believes that all of this is happening. So he started having these out-of-body experiences, which then led him to try and connect with different researchers and scientists and all the rest of these people who then ended up influencing this gateway process in the CIA manual, which is almost like their new cosmology, because people within the CIA, they're looking for this kind of stuff too when they're having an existential crisis, which is really rare for a CIA agent to have. But when they do, they go to the Monroe process and they're like, wow, it all makes sense now. But in essence, Robert Monroe is kind of writing this stuff as that process. Now, Monroe believes that we're sort of connected vibrationally to everything else in the universe. Vibrationally, we're all sort of together, all under one sort of thing, right? And this actually goes back.
I wonder if string theorists like that.
They love it.
I'm sure.
Yeah, it's once you get the scientist reading the stuff that he's talking about, it's I got to go check this out. And so they find out that he's got a lot of scientific sources he's drawing from. He may be drawing his own conclusions off of those scientific sources, but I wouldn't say that they're completely unfounded. And we've got a guy in ancient history, in ancient Greece too, actually Magna Graecia. His name is Parmenides. And Parmenides was talking about something very, very similar in the 700s. And lots of philosophers have pointed out that, all of Western philosophy is footnotes to Plato, but Plato is footnotes to Parmenides. And Parmenides, he wrote On Nature, which was just a very short tract where he's having this weird vision going to see this this queen of the night, or Nyx, as he calls her. And Nyx is giving him this oracle inside of this temple where he formalizes logic, right? So he's talking about A equals A. So in the same document where he's having this existential experience with this goddess, he's also downloading the rules of logic, which get used from that point onward. So our idea of logic comes through this guy who's having this metaphysical trip on nature. So it's almost like all of this science and all of this seriousness comes through the oracles, right? As they're connecting with these gods and goddesses. And On Nature is about the world that is versus the world of opinion. And he says the world of opinion is like an illusion that fades away once the world that is changes. And man lives in the world of opinion, but the gods live in the world of the is, right? This is the separation. It's because we talk to each other in these terms that don't really have any relationship to nature, whereas the gods themselves are commanding of nature. So that's sort of the different realms and the different ideas. So he invented ontology, the study of being. And so from that point on, all of these philosophers have been denigrating Parmenides and saying, no, I'm smarter than Parmenides. They actually have him written into several different plays, right, of the time. They're like, well, Parmenides believed that since we're all one thing, motion is impossible. This was one of his big postulates that people got really upset at because they couldn't disprove him.
Since we're all one thing, movement is impossible?
Yeah, motion would necessarily be impossible if we're all one thing. What are we moving through?
Right. Yeah. Well, aren't we though?
Right.
Like at the base level of the universe.
This goes into Zeno's paradox. So Zeno was a acolyte of Parmenides, and he said if you fire an arrow at a target and it moves halfway to the target, and then it moves halfway again to the target, and then it moves halfway again to the target, when does it ever reach the target? Because it's going to keep going halfway, and it has to be the same thing. Like there has to be no separation for these things to actually unify and touch. So the thing that's fake is the space between them, because eventually they're going to be one thing. And so we're seeing the world our way when actually, we could just as easily be two-dimensional, right? Have you ever seen the problem with a two-dimensional life form, right?
I've seen that. Yeah. So there's ways through occult practice or just mushrooms or even breath work to kind of get glimpses into these other sides.
Right. So they would say if you're moving through a two-dimensional world, they would never be able to see the full extent of you. So let's say as your 5 fingers are moving in, they would see, 5 circles in front of them. It wouldn't be.
It's like it's like what a fish would see if I was looking at it in a bowl.
Right.
kind of, sort of.
And so when we apply our logic and understanding, we come to these very, very stark, I guess you would call them, questions that should make us question the rest of our reality. But instead we kind of cope, right? So we cope with, and they've been coping with the Zeno's paradox for like maybe 2,500 years until recently, where they're like, actually, we solved it using calculus, and we had to do a bunch of copes in the calculus to get to a point where we can actually make sense of Zeno's paradox.
There's a modern form of the word cope that's used online. Like in my line of work, cope, like I'm a mental health counselor, is like your ability to deal with stress and trauma or whatever. But what the cope you're using is the online slang, correct? Which is like,
Right.
It's like you're making excuses, right?
Right.
So
It's
to
like a
speak.
patch, right?
Yes.
We're putting a patch on the program.
Yeah. Yes. We're putting a patch on the problem so that my idea works.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's so many cups. We're in the middle of a authentication crisis within science, where about half or more of the papers that have been tested for repeatability cannot be repeated. And the point of science was to create something repeatable so anybody else doing the same thing can find the same results. But if half or more of the papers aren't repeatable, how can we even call it science? Because we're not following the same methodologies.
I think it has something to do with like we try our best to be systemic about this stuff,
Right.
but science is like often a creative process, and systems stifle creativity a lot of times.
Well, they
And that's what you
necessarily
see.
have to. If your system is good, it will stifle the creativity to change that system.
Yeah.
We are not systems. That's the
Right.
problem.
Well, our consciousness isn't, and our perception of reality is like very fluid and very like it's we're literally a different person moment to moment,
Right. And so these conflicts can be found in the ancient world as much as they can be found today. Unfortunately, we have a lot of different ideas when it comes to the very same topics that maybe they were talking about thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
And the reason we don't have that other perspective is because we didn't know that people were actually talking about these very same topics.
Because it's been hidden and controlled, right? And let me tell you an interesting story that happened to me that I want to see what you'll do with. I don't know if I ever told this anywhere before. It's nothing that crazy, but I was in London, and we went to the palace and stuff, and like watched the changing of the guard. Yeah. We watched that whole thing. We walked down by the river. We had a great time. And then it started to get dark, and we saw a little cafe at the top of the hill. So we walked up to this cafe, and we sat down, and a guy walked in who like immediately drew my attention, but there was nothing like special about like appearance wise about this person. He was 80 something, small in stature, white British looking guy, looked kind of rich. Literally, I swear he had like a pocket watch tucked into his like pocket and stuff like that. But he had like a twinkle in his eye. I don't know if it was good or bad or what, but he got seated next to us, and he was by himself. And I always spark up conversations with people, especially when I'm traveling. And we talked for like a while, and before this came up, and then like I had mentioned I lived in California because I went to grad school in California. And he goes, "Oh yeah, I just got back from California a few months ago. I usually go every year." I was like, "Oh yeah, what do you go for?" And he's like, "Oh, it's a retreat near San Francisco." And I'm like, "Huh, okay." And what's really weird is 2 weeks before this, I had been down the rabbit hole before, but 2 weeks before this, I tried to make my wife go down the Bohemian Grove rabbit hole, and I showed her like a bunch of videos and shit like that. And she was like, "Yeah, whatever." And then in this moment, my wife's like realizes like what's happening, and she's like kicking me under the table because she's like, don't do it, don't say anything. And but I I did say, oh, is like, so there was a few other instances in the conversation, and so this dude like lived on, I can't remember the name of it. I wish I could for the life of me, but he lives on one of these like islands that's owned by the UK and the British monarchy, but it's like off of Spain, I think. But anyway, it's like a tiny little island that I looked up with like all these
Azores.
but it has all these like massive houses and properties and bunkers and crazy. It's a crazy place. I just can't remember the name of it. But anyway, I asked the dude. I said, "Is it, Bohemian Grove?" And he kind of gave me this kind of smirk, and he said, "Yeah, but there's a lot of stuff tied to that like, is just, internet stuff that, and I was like, just internet stuff. Right. Right. And he said it kind of like in a way an 83-year-old would. I don't think he really understood the internet, but I'm not shout out to 83-year-olds who are watching this who might really understand the internet, but like my parents don't. But anyway, what ended up happening was, he told me about like how he goes to Bohemian Grove once a year, and has been since the 1940s when he went to college, I believe at Stanford, in California. Yeah. And I asked him, I said, so what do y'all get into up there? He's like, just what you do at any retreat. We relax, we listen to music, there's massages and food and, that kind of thing. There's group gatherings, there's sharing of information. And it was just this brief encounter that I probably explained way too long because you knew what I was talking about. But it's this brief encounter I had where I was like, that guy might have been a like metaphorical lizard person. And when I say that, I mean like somebody
he lived on an island in the middle of the Atlantic that's related between Spain and England.
Yes, correct. That you need helicopters or private jets to get to, or a boat and a helicopter, something like that. And he's been going since the 40s. Since the 40s. The Sea Empire.
The Sea Empire.
Yeah.
It's the continuation. Like, we don't think of things as in terms of land versus sea anymore. But
I've been thinking about it a lot. I've been thinking about it a lot lately because, and I don't do politics on my show at all, but I got really interested in the history of Greenland, and I went down this rabbit hole about how like the map makes it look way bigger than it actually is, and it's like you could fit it inside of like the Republic of Congo, but it looks the same size and stuff like that. But there's no conspiracy behind that, really. There might be, but anyway, I've been like for some reason going crazy on Greenland, but geopolitically right now, naval intelligence is at an all-time like high.
Trump just said that he wants to establish the technate of Greenland. Technate. Like we're talking about, like the technocratic society from Canada and America, the ones that got banned for being a scam organization back in the 1920s, right? They were kicked out of New York City or Buffalo, New York, for having this scam organization that was called Technocracy Incorporated, that Elon Musk's father, or I think it was his mother's side, came out of the technotronic era. So the technate of Greenland is a direct reference to the technocratic society. Now, technocrats means being ruled by this technology, right? Mm-hmm. Technocracy is being ruled by technology. And what they're planning to do is have a fully technocratic Greenland where basically they can use this place for all of this AI crap. So you don't need all of this water because the water is used to cool all of these AI processors. Now, that's one of the reasons.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that there's these like massive, like all this AI and data storage and shit that's going on. There is what people they blame like water usage in California and stuff like that on fucking people. Meanwhile, it kills me. Meanwhile, they're just at a epidemic proportion. Just fucking, that's so funny to me.
Right. Well, this gets into what we were going to talk about originally, which was the sports betting apps.
Yeah.
And what's going on with that? Well, you got to combine these two ideas, because everything, when it comes to information, it's all going towards the data centers. And so now you've got these data centers which are going to be managing all of the streaming sports data, and then the sports betting apps which are going to be on top of that. Now, Kalshi and some of these other apps, when it comes to sports betting, you can bet on literally anything.
Yeah.
When has the casino ever let you run away with all this money? Right? When have they ever let you run away with all of this cash that you're making them?
Well, they don't. The percentages are in every single game in their favor. I was a blackjack dealer for a couple months.
You understand what I'm getting at? So the very fact that all of this sports betting exists should tell you that it's all rigged.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to let you run away with that kind of cash. We're talking billions and billions of dollars. So
it shows up on. I watch. I don't watch professional sports much anymore, but the one I do watch is MMA, and every MMA YouTuber, every event, it's just plastered everywhere. Everywhere. Now, what you got to keep in mind too is that these teams are highly symbolic of occult principles. You've got the Rams, you've got the Redskins, you've got all these different very occult names being sort of integrated in there. Now, one of the ancient philosophies that seems to has pretty much disappeared was the idea of isopsophy. And this was a Greek term before it became gematria. Every letter has a number associated with it. All of the Greek letters were also numbers. So isopsophy gives you both letters and numbers as a way of creating new formulas. And the way that the Greeks did it was more complicated than what later gematria forms that were associated with the Hebrew Bible were. But it also shows you that if they're being influenced by isopsophy to write the book the way that they did, that maybe there's a lot more of this occult mystery school knowledge incorporated into the Bible that people aren't really looking at too much. But if these two things can be true, and they're using this ancient form of isopsophy, gematria, to write in different formulas using letters as numbers, there could be something to it. I know for a long time people have talked about Bible codes and how Hebrew is numbers and Hebrew is letters. Well, that's true, but where did that stuff really come through? It started to bloom with isopsophy, and you could see this in the towns of Herculaneum and the other one that was covered by ash, right? So you could actually find isopsophy in the graffiti of the ancient cities, like they're talking about their love by her number, right? This is a very different way of seeing, numbers and letters. And so it was a very common practice back then for people to understand the relationship between numbers and words. And the relationship between numbers and words are a way of achieving a type of divination, which we see through gematria and all of these other ideas. This is why we see the number 33 being brought up again and again and again. So 33 represents a perfect third because it's 3 repeating, right? So if you're talking about a perfect third for the number 10, it would be 3 and then a whole bunch of 3s after that. It's the perfect third, which is 33. That, when you control the third, when you control the perfect third, you can control the rest of the system. That's at least the theory when it comes to those numbers. So whoever's putting out the most 33s is going to have the most influence over that society. This is why they talk about 33 stitches, 33 this, 33 that, 33 hours. It's because they're putting out the symbol that they think is going, it's kind of like it's a lot of superstition, right? But at the same time, there might be something to it. It's very ancient superstition. You're not going to find this without looking.
the people putting out the 33s when it comes to these stories are trying to be believed. They're begging people to be believed. And it's a superstition of theirs that all of these things, these messages they send to one another, have to be in numbers, have to be in these sacred numbers. It's the sacred geometry because they think all is number, which is a very Pythagorean concept, right? So Pythagoras believed the base level of everything is the numbers that make it up, right? It's a very different way of seeing all of these different emanations because number applies to all of it. It doesn't matter if you're talking about the number of molecules in a dish or if you're talking about the number of plays in a football game. Mm-hmm. Number is at the base of all of it. And if number is the label system on the entire universe, then there should be something to it. And a lot of different sects of ancient religion saw numbers as the language of God. So,
well, even from a scientific perspective, I'm gonna butcher this. I heard it on a panel of scientists, but the supposedly the code, the universe is written in ones and zeros. It's written in a binary code of numbers, repeating numbers of binary.
Some form of vibrating entity like is sort of creating the ones and the zeros of the wave pattern, right? So a wave pattern, if you're looking at one part of the wave, you're only going to see, is it there or is it gone? The top part of a wave pattern could be considered ones and zeros. Mm-hmm. Is it there or is it not? That's sort of what brings about the particle. But also on Tuesdays, me and my buddy Nick, we go through 777, which is the Kabbalah of Aleister Crowley. He wrote a whole book about his gematria, and we're just going through page by page. Because a lot of people want to say a lot of things about Crowley, but they don't actually try and get into his head and try and figure it out for themselves. They're just going off of what other people have said. I think it's much more important to get to the very base level of this stuff so that you can understand how he built off of that. And I think this book combines his ideas of Kabbalah and all the people he shits on who don't do very good Kabbalah and his own form of practice. People try and say that he's an atheist or whatever, but this book shows he was very much into believing in God. It's just not the same God that all the rest of these people believe in themselves. So it's a very different perspective.
Yeah. Right. And so just because of the few rabbit holes I've been down on conspiracies and whatever, my connection with Aleister Crowley is somehow he's connected to the Bushes, and somehow that sent me to Iraq. And somehow that's connected to Bohemian Grove. But I don't know if that's true or not. But it must have been some weird documentary I watched.
All of the planes that hit the buildings on 9/11 were all Crowley numbers. Flight 93, flight number 11. All of these are the most important numbers in his Kabbalah that he keeps referring back to, and that the OTO, his organization that he started, keeps referring back to. They even say 93 to each other within the OTO as a greeting. 93.
Yeah, Nick told me that. That's right.
Right. So all of this stuff really is like, and they say that he was the real father of Barbara Bush because he actually kind of had an affair with her mother. And you could kind of see the resemblance in her face. Kind of looks like Crowley. So this could be like generation 2 of this inner order naval intelligence between the US and Britain and all the rest of these different countries. Do they still have these unions where a person is in charge of vast fortunes through marriage, through reproduction? And we could see with,
I think so, yeah.
The leader of Canada, the premier of Canada, right? He looks exactly like the guy from, he's not the leader of Canada
Fidel Castro. He's gone,
Fidel Castro.
Yeah. What's the dude's? I can't believe I forgot his name already. I'm Canadian. But yeah, he does look just like Fidel. He does look just like Fidel Castro. And what's interesting about that, it's interesting you said that, because there's no way he doesn't know that. And there's no way he's never heard that. It seems to be like a at the upper echelons of this stuff, part of the deal. To keep, for I don't know if it's a bloodline purity or if it's a keeping information close or whatever, but
really, really old practices of I guess property transference, right? So have you ever seen the movie Eyes Wide Shut?
yes,
Stanley Kubrick movie,
Yeah,
where they have this big orgy at the end, and it's all about sex and death and all the rest of this stuff. And this orgy is to impregnate these women who are basically these
right.
sort of pass around women. They're all wearing masks, so you don't know who the father is within the organization. Everybody has supplied some biological material.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? So
yeah.
now if you're trying to remove sort of like a family context to the ownership of property to now you're part of an organization where there's no way for you to know who's your actual kid or who isn't. You have to apply by these rules, which we've given you because we've also given you power.
Right. And that's where that comes from, right? That, yes. It's all
Starting
about the power.
It's all about the power. Now, if that's the case when it comes to people like Crowley and Barbara Bush's mother, right? Possibly, but you can kind of see the reflection there. This goes back to the ancient practice. This is also called temple prostitution.
Yeah.
Temple prostitution. Now, if there is a form of temple prostitution still at play within these ancient elite families like the Bush line, it wouldn't surprise me. But the temple prostitution was the idea that a woman has to be brought through this temple practice of being, prostituted out to these different men until they can be bought and a husband and a family. This was related closely with the practice of slavery as well. So this is more of a white slavery, which we can actually kind of understand. The people who would be elites today would probably be the slave owners of yesteryear, only they're not getting the attention as such.
I can't help but think of, initiations into the highest levels of finance, media, Hollywood, politics. All I got to say is Epstein and Diddy, and that covers two of those. And I can't. So, like, to me, I feel like, like somebody like Oprah or LeBron James or whatever gets compromised compromised for lack of a better word, initiated, whatever. And then they've got all this power. But then you're like stuck with it. You're like, I don't know that sometimes I want to know, what, because they're probably only not even near the top, but they're like they're kind of there, and I don't even know if I want to know, because
right. Here's the thing though, we're living in a post-democratic world. I think everybody is on to the notion that what you vote for really doesn't matter. So unless we actually get really honest with ourselves and try and figure out what the actual levers of power are in this world, we're probably going to be stuck in the dark. So to know and understand this stuff is better than just to point fingers and call it evil. Now, if you've got a tool that can start to change these things, this is a good way of looking at it, because you have to know a person's family. You have to know their bloodline, because not knowing that could mean the difference between all sorts of different outcomes. And
sorry, go ahead.
It seems like we're, the people on the bottom are the ones who don't know where they come from in this world. They don't know their ancestry. They don't know what's actually happening in their ancient history. It's sort of like they popped in out of nowhere. Like that's no way to live. You've got to actually know your roots so you can know where you're going. And the elites do, and we've kind of all forgotten, and we've gotten away from our family and all the rest of these things.
Yeah, well, they're controlling how we think at every angle. I run into this all the time. I don't want to say just in various areas of my life where people are totally hypnotized by narratives being played out on TV and stuff like that, or on their phone. And they don't know that it's like they know, but they don't know, that they're
Right.
being herded into they're being herded into a tribe and having the rage manufactured and stuff like that. And that's how politics is run nowadays, is pushing everyone to extremes, manufacturing rage. I don't want to get into it, but I think all this, pretty much every major thing that everyone was talking about, including right now, was manufactured. I believe both on site and coordinated effort to have everyone arguing about this, or everyone thinking about this, or everyone worried about this, or everyone. And then what's so fascinating is the simple channel switch, or switch from Facebook to X, and you'll see the polar opposite perspectives, and
Right.
and the amount of people that are caught up in this level of control. It's wild.
Right. I think people need to consider this. We're sitting in fully constructed homes that somebody else built.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't our reality be prefabricated for us? Just like these structures are around
I never
us.
thought about it that way. Yeah.
That's the way power would work in a system where you could just move into a place that somebody else built specifically for you to buy it. Right?
Yeah.
This is a lot of meaning and a lot of purpose being transferred between lots and lots of people, and it takes a lot of planning to get to that place.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of evolutions of systems, and a lot of secret mystery schools, and encoded language and things like that, and a lot of compromise of elite people and things like that in order to make that happen. But what's interesting is it's not like in the 1940s people just started doing that. It's been an entire evolution all the way up until what we're looking at now with military industrial complex, pharmaceutical industrial complex, everything, the media, everything that's just there to change our behavior, change the way we think.
We connect.
It's a massive scale though right now. It's happening at a massive billions of people. It's insane.
Right, we connect the pictures of these ancient motifs to the ideas that were prevalent in their society, but we stop doing that with ourselves because we're kind of like the fish, right? We're in the culture and we don't even know it.
We don't know we're in the fishbowl. Yeah, right. And even if you do abstractly, because I think about this fucking every day, but I don't know what fishbowl I'm in. I could be on a giant shelf at a fucking pet store with a bunch of different fish bowls with a bunch of different kinds of fish, and I have no idea. Just all I know is I'm in some layer of fishbowl reality, right? Because it could be layers. Yeah,
perfect example. It is fishbook because it's just like culture. You don't even know that there's water surrounding you until you're outside of it.
Yes.
It's fishbook.
It's exactly. Cut off the air supply and you're like, oh shit.
Right.
And you could just take that and go forever. The fishbowl is in Costco. Costco is in Minnesota, right? And all
age of Pisces. We're in the age of Pisces, right? Transitioning into the age of Aquarius, right? We can see this energetically. We're transferring from outside of the fishbowl into the ocean or something, right? And
you can see that happening though with people waking up. There is a global awakening happening, I believe. And for good and bad. I don't know, but you can see that happening. That like, it's like it makes me think of like, well, there was some kind of land walking mammal that went into the ocean and became a fucking whale, but it's kind of a similar concept. Yeah.
Right. Well, here's the thing too. You've got these symbols that are governing our reality through maybe subconscious processes are also revealing the nature of the reality to come. So if this is the age of Aquarius, it's a water sign and it's also an air sign, the watery air sign. Which, what better example of watery air is there than radio waves, right? Radio waves through the air, kind of like water. And we're picking up on these radio waves now. We're talking in the age of Aquarius language over the religion of the age of Aquarius, which is the radio waves. I mean, like, we're in it. Who would have thought? Who would have predicted? Well, there's the symbols. Maybe it is the Matrix.
Yeah, well, isn't like reality a fucking wave, like that collapses once we look at it, or something like that?
Who was talking about that when they first came up with these symbols?
Yeah, because it all seems related,
right?
And I'm speaking at it through a scientific perspective, which actually doesn't have very good tools to measure it at all. The only real tool they have is the double slit experiment. But you can see this stuff, like they had some kind of understanding of it, is what you're saying. The base level of reality.
We've got the most powerful tool for understanding reality right between our ears.
Yeah.
And we can see this over and over again. The ancient Greeks thought of the first god in the universe, right? Before everything became what it was, his name is Phanes Protogonos, and he comes out of the Orphic egg. The Orphic egg is that egg surrounded by the snake, right? And that snake sort of represents this snake of chaos idea, right? Back to that snake. And then when Phanes is born, Phanes means light. When he's born, you have light in the universe, and his name is Phanes Protogonos, which means light, the firstborn. Well, when you get into the Big Bang, or even the conception of a human being, you've got this flash of light. It's this egg flash. Everything exists, right? And when you're talking about humans being born or the existence of the universe, all of these things sort of mesh up with these symbols that were very, very, very painstakingly thought out by the ancient man as they were experiencing their form of scientific reality with the universe, as they were trying to describe the mechanism, the tools that they saw in their minds. They came up with these symbols for us specifically.
Yeah, and now we're caught in this sort of time where we think we're advanced, and we look at everything with scientific rigor and all that stuff. And what we're really doing is like cutting out like a large portion of reality. That's why the double slit experiment is kind of like, okay, what do we do now? What, right? Like, I looked at the particle, or I looked at the wave and it collapsed into a particle. Now what? You know, and part of me like leans towards that. And this is just sort of what I've been thinking this whole time, is that is on purpose, because it's much easier to control us in a material paradigm. Does that make sense?
Well, I think we're kind of controlling ourselves in the material paradigm. I mean, there's so many different ways that we could see the universe, and this universe that we're given right now is the one that's packaged up and handed to us. And when we open it, we're like, there's a lot of messages in here I don't like. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of things around us that is the same way. You know, I mean, look at the fast food that we eat. Look at the the medical systems that we have, like all of these different things have both good and evil all packaged together in the same thing. It's just, it becomes our job and our duty to figure out ways of sharing the symbols, of trying to keep other people off of the same sort of garbage that we've been fed.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what I meant about global awakening. More and more people are, that's why I said it's good and bad, because there's people shucking off the systems and the paradigms and the old world ways of thinking. And then there's like some like unhelpful ones coming out and things like that. But that should all take place in the, marketplace of ideas. That's a good thing. Because
Right.
the good ideas will stick around, right?
Right. And that's really what we find in symbolism is the good ideas tend to take up more space within the world of symbols. And it actually reflects a lot of the consciousness of the individuals who are talking about that. So when you look at these ancient motifs, you're looking at the same thing. These are the things that bubbled up to the surface that they thought was so important that they put on all of these rocks, and they put on all of these palaces, and that they rolled into the clay. Like those are the ancient symbols, those are the ancient motifs that they themselves were participating with,
Yeah.
and that's a beautiful thing.
It is. And you go back thousands and thousands of years. Some people like consider those people not as smart as us or whatever, but like those people had the same size brains as us, and they were looking at the world in a totally like different way because they didn't get all this magic spells cast on them.
Well, they did. They did.
Yeah,
it was nature that was casting the spell, and they recognized it. If you look at Gobekli Tepe, you can see them bringing glorification to nature because they realized what that kind of spell that is. It's to them it was a massive gift.
Yeah,
and for us, are we looking at the world as a gift like that? I think that's a huge difference in perspective. This is why we're not building these cathedrals anymore, is because I don't think we feel the same gratitude.
Yeah, we build these things that just aren't built to last, and things like that. This struck me as you were saying that maybe that could explain megalithic architecture, generally speaking.
They were very grateful for their lives, and they wanted to show as much gratitude as they could through these structures and through these ideas that come through them. I mean, the megalithic architecture, if it's anything, it shows a vast amount of just dedication, total commitment.
Yeah, like whether it was to precision or for time over large stretches of time.
To lift the damn thing and move it. They moved these things hundreds of miles.
Everything had to have been literally perfect. And then when you see like modern examples of us trying to move things like not even close to the same size and stuff, it's all like haphazard and stuff like that. Right. And so I do believe those people, like ancient people, just definitely had it. I like the idea of they did have some magic. Because your reality is magic.
But you think they could ever conceive of these radio waves coming into these objects and lighting up and giving them a view of their friends or family hundreds of miles away? Absolutely not. Maybe there's stuff about them that we can't even imagine they were capable of doing, because, hey, we've got these things too. Like this would be totally incredible to them. Maybe they've built their own things. And we're talking about hundreds of thousands of years here, people. Like we've got a fireplace from 400,000 years ago in England.
Yep.
It throws everything out of the water when you realize the immensity of that scale and what people can do in just a short lifetime, much less 400,000 years
of organizational societal structure. You know, we always got to contend with nature, but like that's why there's, you know, I believe in the iteration theory. You know, I just made that up, but it's, you know, 200, 300,000, potentially longer, 400,000, potentially longer, different types of hominids existing at the same time on the planet. They're just as smart, but maybe in a different way, things like that. Right. And the only way to pass messages through, because of nature, because of how violent nature can be, the only way to pass these messages across time is through megalithic architecture in stone.
Well, what type of knowledge were they collecting? We always think about knowledge as being knowledge, right?
Yeah.
But what type of knowledge were they collecting and passing on? That changes the entire perspective of the society. We pass on material information. We try and write it down about all of these different materials. We don't talk about experiences we've had with visions in front of the stars. You know, that's a completely foreign concept to most of us. But back then, that was the thing that you wanted to record. That was the thing that you wanted to focus on. And they found a lot of really good info going down that path. There's a lot more knowledge and information out there than we give them credit for. And, you know, unfortunately, or fortunately, we're starting to rediscover this. We see the Gateway Project as being part of that. You know, it's a different way of exploring the universe. It's almost like inner vision, you know?
Yeah.
So
I like the positive spin you're putting on it, because it's a lot to realize that like your reality is a construct that's very complicated, and that it's not everyone else's reality either, and it's not across space and time and across genetics and all that stuff. It's a lot, you know, and that's why I do believe that that's why people buy into, you know, the manufactured paradigm, because it's fucking easier, man. It's easier that way. Isn't it though? Like, I mean, it's easier existentially, right? Because it might not be easier to be one of those people who's like on Facebook, like, you know, sharing every single, like, you know, whether it's fake or true Trump meme they can find and going, look at this guy, I hate this guy, right? Or on the flip side of that, whatever the other side of that is, right? And yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but I just feel like it's a lot to take in for a lot of people, and so putting a positive spin on it in a way where it's like, yeah, but this belongs to you. Like, no one owns this but yourself, and you have this tool of creation, and that is, I hope, societal, cultural, spiritual butterfly that continues to come out of its cocoon, you know?
Right. And we see it every day. We see the creativity of just the people who are close to us. It's like, that's incredible. What is that?
Right.
And it's touching upon something much deeper and something much older than I think a lot of people are even aware of, but they feel it. They feel that connection. And I think it's important for them to follow those feelings and create. Use your feelings to create, and you're going to find that they're a lot better expressed than a lot of other things in your life. Like, you know, I paint things that express that sort of hope and that aptitude of like, maybe these ideas can be, you know, a positive thing. It doesn't have to be the end.
Like, you painted that?
Yeah, I did.
Can you tell me about it?
Well, I call it Behold the Eschaton, right? Because you've got the ending of an era coming, you know, pretty shortly, if not already, right?
Yeah, I think eras end over extended periods of time, but yeah,
the American Empire is coming down, you know, and my experience as an American, I can kind of see that coming. But is that really the end? Is this not a new dawn, a new day?
It's a morph, right? Like Roman Empire didn't disappear; it became something else.
It got tested by fire and it changed its shape. And we're getting tested by fire right now, or maybe a lot more in the future. And we're going to find out that we're going to have to change shape. And I think that's sort of the nature of how thought moves over the eons, is that there are these cultures, and these cultures really are the people sharing in that culture. And they have to go through certain events. Those events change the shape of their communication and change the shape permanently, right? You can never go back.
Reality. Yeah. Like 9/11, but there's smaller examples too. It's a very fascinating discussion. There's a bunch of other stuff I wanted to talk to you about today, but I don't think we're going to get to it today. I would like to do another episode about the Rustic Gods series. Sounds interesting too, so maybe we can do that. But my wife's home and I want to go eat with her, and we've been going 1 hour 47, but I'm not wrapping up right this second. I wanted to ask because I actually don't know. And I know a lot of you guys, and I forgot to ask Nick, but like, what is the Occult Rejects? How many of you are there? And like, what do you guys do? How often are you? You're not on there all the time, but sometimes. And what's going on there? I want to shout out that group because they do really cool stuff and they're into a bunch of different topics. And I watch them once a week, so I wanted to shout you guys out.
Well, the Occult Rejects is a group of people who have expressed, kind of an interest into these occult topics, how it relates to other things. And we kind of just rotate people in and out, people who have, shown up as a guest on the show.
I have. I don't think you were there, but I've been on. Talking about Three Eye Atlas.
Well, there we go. Like when you're a guest, like usually we kind of call you back and we see what you're doing. And sometimes you'll be on as a interviewer for other guests, but we found that it takes a lot of people get intimidated by how many people we have up on the stand at any one point. But what they don't realize is that it takes a lot of the pressure off of the speaker because a lot of people are there and ready to ask questions, maybe, have a little bit more input. And we're all coming at it with our own different perspectives on these things. So you can track kind of what people are thinking about by the questions they ask these different guests.
Yeah, it seems that's what I like about it. It's collaborative, and I see what you mean about how like it takes the pressure off, and it maybe somebody asks a question you haven't thought of, or maybe somebody asks a question that you were going to forget to say, and so it turns into a really interesting conversation, especially with people from different perspectives and stuff like that. So I wanted to shout those guys out. I wanted to do it at the beginning, but what are you like? What do you have? What are you working on now? What do you got coming up? Any interesting plans?
Well, I on Mondays I do a show called Alchemy Mondays with my friend Eros, and what we're working on. Well, what I just got done making was actually some of this milk thistle that has been put over a bunch of this stuff called
DMSO.
Dimethyl sulfoxide.
Yeah.
And dimethyl sulfoxide is it's a solvent that comes from wood pulp, right? So it's not as exotic as the name makes it sound, but it is a different substance entirely from water. So it has different properties from water, even though it is water soluble. It freezes at 66 degrees. So a chilly day will actually cause this thing to freeze. That's kind of odd, right? And also it has a very high evaporation point. So up around like 350 or something, the temperature has to be that hot for it to start evaporating. And so DMSO is, there was a war against it by the FDA back in the 1970s, but it's used for lotions and other different things. It goes directly through the skin. In fact, DMSO,
arthritis. People use it for arthritis.
Right. Within the tree itself, it has to be super penetrating so that these different chemicals can be sent different parts of the tree. So this is the chemical messenger of the tree. So it's actually a really good example of a mercurial type substance as well. So yeah, DMSO extraction with milk thistle, I thought would be an interesting concept. So I made it. I'm going to put it in some lotions or something, probably just a little drop, because DMSO is powerful stuff.
It's strong. Yeah, it's strong.
Right.
Yeah,
And-
I made a mistake with it one time, and I was like, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, tonight I have 777 again with Nick
Mm-hmm.
from the Occult Rejects, and we're reading through Aleister Crowley's Kabbalah and throwing in some of our own input and everything like that. I also do a show on the rustic gods with Jules. We're going to try and get that on Wednesdays. And then on Thursdays, Rustic Gods is a great series. We just go over all sorts of ancient examples of some of the lesser known gods, usually.
Which is why I like, I'm going to go down the rabbit hole of. I just discovered that series today, and I was like, oh, nice. Because like everyone always does the big ones, and you guys get into all kinds of interesting ones related to nature, and yeah, it's cool. It's great.
Right? We're talking about fairies, nymphs, all of these ideas come through those rustic gods. You know, that rustic gods motif is like, well, these are the sons and daughters of the gods that made it way over there in that forest, and then they come out as these spirits, and it's like, well, so you're saying that our spirits come through the same process of the gods ensouling themselves into this matter? Well, yeah, in different ways. So it's like it actually puts a face on the cosmology a little bit better than what you normally get with these, Olympians and all the rest of this, big mythology. It's
Right.
It's sort of like, this is actually how the, they put the wheels on the thing,
Right.
So,
right.
it also applies to a lot of the stuff going on today, especially with cryptids and things like that. You're talking about, these were like considered divine expressions in older generations, and now we're talking about them, cryptids and stuff, as if they're not even spirits, but they kind of are spirits. So
yeah, they might even be interdimensional. They might be who knows. At this point, I'm open to anything.
That's how the ancient peoples would refer to them. They'd talk about them more as spirits than they would as, physical things, even though they could have dual nature, right? And then on Thursdays, I've got Nick back again for the magical mailbag, and I gotta encourage your viewers, specifically your viewers. I need your emails. So send them to headlessgiantpodcast@gmail.com, and I will read your occult/esoteric/weird stories on the air on Thursday nights.
Very cool.
We always bring a symbol. So check that out.
Looking forward to it.
Trialogues on Sunday. Sorry.
Trialogues on Sunday is you. Yeah, well, I was just going to say, one of the hardest working men in show business, and talking about a bunch of different stuff, collaborating with a bunch of different people, and really putting in the work. That's why I wanted to. Plus, I think you're interesting, and these topics are interesting. This is a good intro for me. I'm looking forward to bringing you back though, and get more, and maybe we can talk about the rustic gods a little bit, and get a little bit more into the alchemy. But what's that concoction supposed to do? What's the intention? You don't know?
It was an experiment. I'm gonna
put it on yourself?
I think I'm gonna combine it with some beef tallow.
Okay.
Definitely cut it with a lot of beef tallow, and then use that as a
soap,
a balm, or
a balm, or a soap. Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if a soap would be good, but probably more like a lotion. Right?
Got it. Very cool. Very cool. Headless Giant, one of the Occult Rejects. Thank you so much for joining the Multiverse, my friend. Have you been on once before? No, this is your literal first time. Like, you haven't been on a live stream?
I think we've been on a live stream together. We all collaborated. Yeah. It was right after.
Right. Okay. So, but this is your official joining the Multiverse, because you're going to be a Friday drop for an interview. So I'm excited to put this one out in a few weeks. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Subscribe to Dave's Multiverse on YouTube, Spotify, and Rumble today.